Hey guys, welcome to Code TED Talk. My name is Carlos Cucalon, and today we're going to learn how to code this responsive navigation and all the functions that go behind it. We're going to be breaking down this video into 3 different videos. One of them is going to be the HTML, the other one is going to be the CSS, and the last one is going to be very short using just JavaScript to create all these functions to be able to open and close the drop-down menus as well as the responsive navigation. So we're going to make sure that we work on this, and as always, we're going to be working on mobile first and then going all the way into our desktop application. So if you want to, please feel free to follow us using this tutorial. We have the initial files on our GitHub account, and you should be able to continue and follow us along with this video. Feel free to pause, and if you have any comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well. So as we're starting, you notice that my setup is using Atom, and I actually have a plugin so that it auto refreshes on the screen, and that's what we're going to be using. We're definitely going to be using GitHub as we're going to be using jQuery as our JavaScript library to make sure that the functions work, and we're also going to be using Font Awesome for all the icons that we're going to be using for the responsive navigation. I have preloaded it to the site, but if you want to, you can go to Font Awesome and set it up yourself so that you can have your own testing environment for them. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the layout for our navigation. One of the things that HTML5 allows you to set up is how content is displayed on the page. So HTML5 makes it a lot more readable for humans. So what I like to do is every time that I have a blank space is to start setting up my content or my content spaces for the content that I'm about to lay down. So the main things that we're going to do is we're going to set up our header, open and close. We're also setting up our main content area, and then we're going to set up our footer. And we're not going to be doing much on the content area, just so that you know the content area, the main content of the site will be going in this area and here. And then of course you also have this footer tag, and then here goes the footer. Right? And in the header area is where we're going to be adding our navigation. Now, keep in mind, this is header, not head, which is for the document itself. This is just a content area. And again, just to help keep separation between the different content on the site. So the first element that we're going to create is going to be another HTML5 tag that is going to be the Nav Tag. And again, we're just trying to make it as accessible as possible. So that's what we're using a lot of these tags that are pertaining to HTML5. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a brand for our site. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an anchor tag with a class of navbar brand. And then here you would actually do something like index.html, but for the brevity of this video, instead of creating actual pages, all I'm gonna do is add the # so that we don't have to create those pages or whatnot. But usually anytime that you click on the logo of the site, which this is what's gonna be, then we're gonna try to link it to the index page of the site. Depending on your folder structure, you may be able to just do the /, which takes you to the home page. If not, then you might have to actually indicate that something like index.html, PHP, whatever language you're coding on. But again, in my case, I'm just going to leave it with a # there. The next thing that we're going to set up in here is going to be actually a button. This button is what we're going to use for the toggle portion of the site. So if you look at this button right here on the right hand side, that's what we're going to be adding right now. And to do this, we're going to create a button item or element, and then we're going to give it a class of navbar toggler. Again, trying to be as expressive as we can with our classes, so that if anybody were to come back behind us and read this code, they will know exactly what each one of these elements is actually doing and affecting inside of our page. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a type of button. And then inside of that, we're going to create, we're actually going to use these this hamburger icon, right, or this bar icon, and I'm using Font Awesome. If you go to Font Awesome, you can actually search for bars, and then you'll be able to copy these icon here, right here, and that's what we're going to use. If you want a tutorial for how to use Font Awesome and how do I use it for CSS and in my process of designing, leave a comment below and I'll be glad to go ahead and create that for you guys. So just knowing that I do use Font Awesome, and we're going to use it in a couple places here. And so what we're going to do, again, we're just going to create this and we're going to add it into our site using the script that we have down here below. It should allow you to display the icon in your page. If it's not working, then I will suggest going through Font Awesome and setting it up yourself so that it makes sure that it works for you. So we have this icon, and the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to create the menu. So we're going to use a div with a class of collabs and navbar collabs. And we're going to give it a specific ID. Let's go ahead and call it main navigation. That way we know which navigation we want this button to interact with. And in order to maybe be able to use it as a hook later on using JavaScript, let's go ahead and add another attribute here called data target. And then let's go ahead and call that pound, again, just to select our ID, and call it main navigation, which is the same as the ID that we have here on the main navigation. Okay. Now, what a navigation is just a set or a list of links. The importance of a navigation is that it really helps with SEO, letting know that search engines which pages you want them to organize and how they're organized within your site, and it gives your user a way to navigate through your site. So one of the main things that I always suggest my students and suggest anybody that is creating a website is to make sure that they do their research, that they name their pages properly, and of course that they use some different type of design principles, like for example Miller's law, which states that if you are going to create a navigation or any element that requires a grouping of other elements, that you should not do it more than 7 plus or minus 2 different elements, so that if you have more than that, your users will start trying to group into more other elements or trying to break it into subgroups. Meaning, if you have a navigation, you should try not to have more than 5, 7, maybe 9, depending, links on your main navigation, before trying to maybe break them down into sub navigations or sub items. So the less that you have, the easier it is for your users to be able to navigate and use your navigation. So anyway, so we have this div, and we created it with a class of navbar collabs and an ID of main navigation. And here we're just going to create an order list. Again, a navigation is a list of menus or items. So let's go ahead and create it. And then let's go ahead and actually give this a class of navbar nav, so that we know how to select it later on using our CSS. If you've noticed, I actually indent every time that I move inside of a different element. It just helps me keep things organized, and as well, it helps whenever I'm creating new elements, know when I'm opening and closing different things. I also, anytime that I code, I try to make sure that I have an opening and a closing before I move on to any other inside elements. That helps me also avoid having elements that maybe I forget to close later on. So that's just something that in the way that I code, and I always encourage other people to do the same, and it just makes it look a lot nicer, a lot more professional as well. So inside of this on order list, we're going to go ahead and create a list item, and we're going to give it a class of nav item. Okay. Inside of that nav item, we're going to create an anchor tag, right? Which is going to have a class of, guess what? Nav link. And of course, we're going to give it an href. And again, I'm using the pound sign just because I don't have an actual page that we're going to link it to. If not, then here you will use your index, about us, whatever page you're creating here. And then just for good sake and being the first icon or the first navigation menu, let's go ahead and call it home. And as you see, as I'm saving here, you'll see the changes being applied on the right-hand side on the mobile screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another nav item here. let's go ahead and copy and paste. And then here, let's just call it link, for example. We're going to copy and paste that again, just so we can create a few more. And then maybe we can call this link 2 for the very last one. Maybe we can create another link 3. But what I would like to do with the middle one, let's go ahead and make it a drop down. A lot of the navigations that I've seen actually have drop downs. So this is a good way for you guys to get some exercise and actually create the drop downs. And it would also show you on how to do it so that you can close and open and use JavaScript to do that. So in this one, again, we still have nav item, but here we're going to call it drop down. We're going to add another class modifier next to nav item. So nav item space drop down, just so we have that modifier in there. And then here we have our anchor tag, tag with a nav link. But in the nav link, let's go ahead and also add another modifier to it called drop down toggle, so that we know that anytime that they press on this, that this would actually be what we're going to use to toggle open this sub navigation that we have underneath here. So let's go ahead and call this, instead of just link, let's go ahead and call it drop down. You can see that here on the right hand side. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a nested list, on order list within this list item. So if you notice, I'm actually right after the anchor tag, I'm going to hit return within the list item itself, and I'm going to create another unordered list. Okay, that's how you create nested unordered list items. So here in this nested UL, we're going to give it a class of drop down menu. Okay, and then inside of it, just like in any unordered list, we have to create a list item. So let's go ahead and create this list item, and this list item is going to have a class of drop down item. I don't know if you're seeing how we're using kind of elements that look very similar to each other. So nav item, drop down item. Hopefully you guys can figure out that we're going to create an anchor tag with a class of drop down link. And here, of course, ref, href, #, and then drop down link 1. And then just so that we have more than just one element here, let's go ahead and duplicate those. And then we're going to save this. And now we have our navigation here. So we have home, link, drop down with our drop down items inside of it. And we have link 2 and link 3 here. And that's what we're going to do. Later on, I would suggest, as we're working on the CSS, for you guys to maybe look in ways in which you can improve. For example, if you look at my code here, or my example here, since we are on the home page, maybe we should have this one highlighted, or let our users know that that's the page that we're on. And maybe that can be accomplished by adding something like a class modifier, like active, on our home element, for example. But again, this is something for you guys to consider. We're not going to cover that here, but you should know enough when we cover the CSS on how to do this. So stay tuned. Go ahead and make sure that you have all these and everything that we have created here on the page. If you need to rewind and kind of see it again, and what we're going to do is we're going to pause here. We're going to move to video 2 to be able to start using or start creating our CSS. So stay tuned for part 2 for the CSS.